Parker and her bestie Miri have decided to ride out this whole pandemic thing by quarantining together at a secluded lake house. Only they're not alone, and someone has taken their love of social distancing way too far. Pandemic horror. As if living through the pandemic wasn't horrible enough. Anyway, pandemic movies are the in thing nowadays, with movies like Songbird, Host, The Harbinger, and who could forget the epic Corona Zombies. Sick takes us back to the onset of pandemic panic, as we follow a young man named Tyler through a near-barren grocery store while he experiences the impossibilities of obtaining toilet paper and the mortal fear someone near you even so much as clearing their throat produced. What a time it was. Well, someone is keeping a close eye on Tyler, and it's not store security. He begins receiving anonymous texts from someone who knows him, and whoever they are, they're close, going so far as to sending him a photo of himself right there in the grocery store. It reminds me of a time I saw a coworker entering Walmart just as I was leaving. I noticed her, but she didn't notice me. I found her car in the parking lot and left a note under her windshield wiper that read, "I'm watching you, Susie." That's not her real name, by the way. I waited in my car until she came out, and the look on her face when she discovered that note. I followed her in my car until she stopped at a red light. I pulled up beside her and honked the horn. When she saw me, she knew. She rolled her window down and had some choice words for me as I cackled uncontrollably. The following day at work, she told me she'd been on the phone with her husband when I pulled up beside her, frantically telling him that she was being stalked. I'm a horrible person. Anyway, soon Tyler returns to the safety of his apartment, and all's well that ends well. Or at least it would have if only he'd locked the door, or later opted to remain in a well-barricaded room instead of wandering around in the dark with a baseball bat. Sounds like a nice little setup for a slasher movie, doesn't it? And when you take into account that Kevin Williamson co-wrote the script, it doesn't take Matlock to crack this case. However, Williamson and co-scribe Caitlin Crabb have a twist or two up their sleeve. Or sleeves. From there, we're introduced to Parker and Miri, their best friends who have ventured out to the middle of nowhere to hold up at Parker's folks' opulent lake house. It's the perfect pandemic-evading pad. That is until an unwanted guest arrives. Lucky for them, he's wearing a mask, but he has no intentions of abiding by social distancing guidelines. From here, Sick turns into a home invasion, survival horror movie with slasher elements. It's quite a mishmash, but for the most part it works rather well. However, this movie rides or dies on the strength of its characters, and whether or not it can take a familiar setup and still generate suspense. But here's the biggie. Can you take something familiar and add a new spin or clever twist to it to make the familiar not so familiar? Normally 2 out of 3 wouldn't be bad, but Williamson and Crabb's attempt to be clever in the third act backfires, creating levels of cringe I hadn't experienced in a long time. But we'll get into that more later. First and foremost, I liked Gideon Adlon's performance as Parker. Parker isn't the most likable or relatable protagonist, but Sick is more concerned with making her feel real than likable, and I appreciated that. Sure, she's a spoiled little rich girl who likes to play head games with her on-again, off-again boyfriend DJ, but when push comes to shove, she's one tough cookie. She doesn't just run and scream from her attacker. She can and does defend herself, quite effectively, as a matter of fact. Unfortunately, there's not much to her bestie Miri, played by Bethlehem Million. She's the best friend, she's a germaphobe, and that's about it. There's some drama between Parker and DJ that didn't feel forced or simply there to pad out the runtime. It actually gave both characters a little bit of depth before the crap hits the fan. And speaking of the crap hitting the fan, the villain in Sick wastes no time getting down to it. The look of the killer is simple but effective, all black outfit, black mask, and sharp knife. He kinda looks like a ninja, and acts like a ninja, surreptitiously slinking around behind characters' backs. It creates some nice suspense, knowing that he's in the house with them, potentially waiting around every corner, lurking in every shadow, or hiding in every closet. There's a moment where the intruder sneakily absconds with everyone's cell phones. I kinda winced when this happened, though. I was thinking, okay, so we'll cut to the next day, and panicked, they'll all be looking for their phones, making accusations against one another, and then they'll be all paranoid when they realize that they're not alone. But that wasn't the case. Sick wastes no time getting down to business, which kinda concerned me too, actually, because the big cat and mouse chase, which is usually relegated to the final act, was taking place way too early, it seemed. If the big chase is taking place now, I mean, what can they possibly do in the third and final act? Well, remember, this is Kevin Williamson, and he loves those long-winded killer monologues. I do want to give Williamson and Crabb credit for injecting some humor into Sick. Get it? Injecting? Such as when Parker and Miri engage in what sounds like the world's deadliest drinking game, in which they take a shot every time Dr. Fauci is mentioned on CNN. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing that now, let alone back in 2020. However, Sick takes a turn in the third act that darn near ruined the whole movie for me. When it comes to the killer reveal and their motivation, oy. I couldn't tell if this angle was being played for laughs or not, and if it was, why? In fact, the tone of the third act is a departure from what came before it, and all logic just goes right out the window. Characters with broken legs can walk pretty much pain-free now after fashioning a splint out of a broken chair leg and saran wrap. And you know the, oh, the killer's dead, but they're not really jump scare moment? We get 3 of those. Look, that's a horror trope that needs to die and stay dead. But again, the reveal and the big motivation dump that occurs in the final act just had me shaking my head the entire time. I get it. And I mean, it maybe could have worked if it weren't so over the top and silly. Still, there's enough to like about the first 2/3 of Sick to give it a recommendation. I kinda want to watch it again, to be honest. Sick is directed by Jack Hyams, son of storied action movie director Peter Hyams. Jack Hyams directed the last 2 Universal Soldier movies, which I've heard are pretty good. Hyams handles the suspense elements well here, and the pacing is on point. And no, it's not meta, it's not self-aware just because Kevin Williamson is involved. As a matter of fact, I dug the minimalist approach to the storytelling here. Small cast, isolated location, menacing intruder, suspense. But that third act, man. If you've seen Sick, please let me know your thoughts on the film down in the comments section below. And while you're down there, let me know what your favorite pandemic horror movie is. If you like this video, please leave it a thumbs up and share it on social media. If you're not following me on social media, those links are in the description. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Take care, and until next time, peace. Thank you to all my patrons and channel members. I appreciate your generosity and support of my channel. Become a patron today and have a say in what content appears on my channel. Join me for monthly live streams and much more. Become a channel member today and get access to exclusive badges and emotes to use when I stream. Both those links are in the description. Say hello to the internet, Jeremy.
Hello to the internet.